Good morning.
Good morning.
So I'm Tet Gallardo, and I serve a small church in Manila. It's about the size of that section over there. That's our church, which is attended by about 40 people on average. On good days, maybe 70, but on holidays when there's a feast, it can swell up to 100. And we have an eighth principle that says there is God and God is love, aside from the 7 principles. So thank you for inviting me here. Today I would like to talk about conversation. Conversation is a unit of experience, I think, between a living thing and something else. Like, doesn't a work of art speak to you? When we hold space with someone in the silence of their hearts, don't we communicate volumes of love to them? Isn't awareness of anything enough to let it change us? A Syrian refugee at sea is in conversation with a Burundian in Canada. I know this Burundian. In fact, David and I are friends with him. He was a refugee from Burundi. He had fled to Canada. He has not met with that Syrian refugee. But the story has already changed his life and possibly his decision to flee Burundi towards Canada and not towards any other country. Yet they've never met. Trayvon Martin is in conversation with a Hindu from India. I lived with that Indian. He is my best friend. His mother is said to be of pure Aryan race, the Persian one. His mother had married his farmer father. He despairs at how black people are treated in America and how Trayvon Martin was gunned down. Yet my Indian friend never met him. A Native American in Standing Rock is in conversation with a Unitarian from the Philippines. That's me. I had been following their cause, opposing the Dakota Access Pipeline, but I never imagined I would travel 8 states in my involvement in Standing Rock, and to be with 500 other clergy from different faiths, or that I would support water protectors and people of different Native American nations in asserting their sovereignty over land and water. I didn't also imagine that I would be quoted by Associated Press with UUA President Peter Morales and syndicated by ABC News and 2 other local papers. It's amazing. Our narratives are really linked, isn't it? Water is such a huge part of the Philippines. Water is very much also a symbol of destruction in my country, as we are visited by more than 10 storms a year, with increasing likelihood of super typhoons. Time magazine dubbed us as the most storm-exposed country in the world. We are 7,000 islands. So there's always a beach. It's a happy place. A study came out that we are the country that uses the word love most often. A study at UC Berkeley said the Philippines is 9th on the top of the world's list for happy countries where depression is low. We have a saying, go to the beach when we are sad. We are constantly surrounded by beaches, lakes, rivers, and falls. The story of the Native American people, your story and mine, are in fact as linked as our waters. If you have read that there are only 6 degrees of separation between any 2 people in this planet, have you heard of that?
Yes.
Now for Facebook, according to the people in Facebook, that is now down to 3.5 degrees. So I recently looked at my numbers. I Googled an app, and there's an app that you can click so you know your degrees of separation, average degrees of separation with people on Earth. So get this, Mark Zuckerberg, founder of Facebook, had 3.17 degrees on average separation from any person on Earth. He has millions of followers, right? So I only have 4,000 friends. But here's Mark Zuckerberg, 3.17 degrees of separation. Tet Gallardo, 2.99. I don't know how that happened, except I surmise my friends have more friends than his friends. So, this probably sends shivers down the introvert spine, right? At least half of me is an introvert. That is the half that cannot tolerate small talk for more than 10 minutes. That is the half that will try to isolate me from the rest of the world for days. I tire of getting wounded by too many microaggressions from people who don't seem to understand me. And sometimes I spend more time on Facebook than Zuckerberg. It is becoming more and more evident that we don't just talk to people who are in the room. We are talking to people way beyond that which we can see. Our narratives interact. Conversation is the backbone of human societies, yet we do not know how to manage it. Because it is easy to have a verbal exchange, we take it for granted and just blabber on, right? People used to say much of communication is nonverbal, but apparently scientists have discovered that most of communication is nonverbal. And sometimes we don't even have to be in the same room with people we speak to. Sometimes we don't even have to see each other or know each other. That a particular story exists somewhere in the world is enough for someone somewhere else to have their life changed. We have technology that proves that after an earthquake struck Haiti, Twitter and Facebook lit up with ideas on how to help, and only within 3 hours, the whole human race was in an empathic embrace with it. This term was coined by Jeremy Rifkin, a social scientist. He also says that when we see a human being suffer, for instance, so-called mirror neurons in our brains, they mirror the neurons in the brains of someone who is experiencing the suffering themselves. And he called this, you can see this in his book, I think, or a talk entitled The Empathic Civilization. Studies have found that we do not really have, the first drive is not selfish, but to belong. Studies have also found that social isolation kills more people than obesity does. And there is even a TED Talk by Robert Waldinger about a study where over 75 years they have tracked the lives of 724 men. Half of them came from Harvard, well-to-do, highly educated. Half of them came from a poor community in Boston. One of them even became the President of the United States, but he wouldn't say who. And they found that over 75 years, good relationships are what makes for true happiness. Good relationships protect bodies and brains. People in good relationships stay mentally sharper longer and maintain ableness of the body longer. So that is something to think about. Only last week, I was in Indian Canyon in a 4-day spiritual dance retreat with Paiute and Shoshone peoples. And we found that they and us Filipinos have the same word for mother, ina, the same word for grandfather, apo. Several generations and miles and thousands of years apart, these civilizations, ours and theirs, and we retain the same words for the most important, the relationship-based important. As I was there, as one of the only 4 new people getting initiated in their ancient traditions, they let me become part of their rituals. At one point, they let me carry the buffalo meat, and channel it and speak about it before I served them personally at the feast. There, about 36 other people were present. At another time, they asked me to pierce the veil, which involved me holding the bow and shooting the arrow in the dark in the forest and just be guided by my ears where it flew and landed, and I was supposed to retrieve it and bow to it 4 times and raise it up to the gods before I brought it back, and then we would say prayers. So the one who asked me to do this was Barbara, and it happened that she was actually half Filipino, so I was like, wow, I'm so connected, so I just felt happy about it. And among the 28, this kind of spiritual exercise is not alien to me because among the 28 Unitarian congregations of the Philippines, many ministers are farmers living in the mountains, and they practice animist and pagan rituals. And many of them are faith healers. So we went into a clearing and I shot the arrow. So when we retrieved it and we prayed over it, then she asked me, so have you shot a bow and arrow before? I said, no. But I said yes because I felt like it. So I told her that and she just laughed. But still, I never imagined that I would be there and to hear a message from Standing Rock be brought there with an appeal to us in the Indian Canyon when they said, we need your help. Our numbers are dwindling. The force is too strong against us. We don't know how to move forward anymore. Can there be anything left for help to be done to support us? So they said we should just pray and see what else we can do because of course non-violence is the way for them. So I thought the only thing that I would do, which I'm not discounting is a big thing, is praying. I never thought that I would actually go there. And it was a rude awakening for me because it was the first time that I was really close to the lakes and the mountains, the rivers, and protecting Mother Earth. In my work for social justice of 30 years, that was the only time I felt I was really fighting for Mother Earth. So let me wrap up by sharing with you 3 things I learned at Standing Rock. First lesson, we all belong to tribes, even those who say they don't. As an elder told us as she came to the center of our meeting, you know, there was about 500 clergy in the gym. People were using the microphones. And then in comes an old, they call auntie, an old woman with her stage presence. And the way she walked she was so well respected her whole life. And she didn't need the microphone. And she just walked, swooping everybody's attention to her. And she said, where do you come from? Tell us about yourself, what you bring here. What is your purpose? No, tell us, where do you really come from? You have a tribe, where do you come from? Are they a peaceful tribe? That's what she said. And this to me is a shock. And I realized that truly some people of color initiatives only reinforce the idea that whiteness has no tribe or no race. But indeed, we all belong to tribes, we all do. When we come to the table, we bring our tribe and we should not deny it. Lesson 2, privilege belongs to those who inherit the earth, not to those who have first dibs at owning it. If these rich people were really so privileged, why do they take more and more from people who have nothing? If they were so privileged, how can they be so lacking in wisdom? Is privilege the sensibility of a toddler who thinks they are the center of the world because we give them respect? Why is it privilege when the Bundy brothers take over a piece of land and are not touched by police? In every other part of the world, that is just called corruption. I call this the mentality of toddler supremacy. Remember, there is no white, only tribes. Third lesson, conversation is a living thing. How do we feed it well? Conversation is like water. It is the backbone of every relationship. It connects people to people and carries with it lives, concerns, families, persons, longings, and myths. How are we feeding good, honest, and open conversations? How are we nurturing our lives through it? How are we talking to people who are not in the room? I have gone through 8 states on a road trip with 8 seminarians from Starr King and the Graduate Theological Union. And you know what? We took care of our conversations. I was amazed. We withstood our differences and showed as much love as we could in our diversity and through tests of hunger and exhaustion. And in fact, at one point, we were pulled over by police. One of us, we were caravanning. The car in front was pulled over by police because the police said they were speeding. But then the police started to ask questions, where are you going? And then they said, we're going to see friends. And then the police said, you can tell me if you're going to Standing Rock, you know. And this was like 10 hours away from Standing Rock. And we came back, anyway, the 8 seminarians came back to Berkeley safe, and we were just so happy. And we've become so close because of the things, the scary things that we've been through. And that gives me so much hope in humanity. And I just wanted to share that with you today, and I hope that you please support Standing Rock. Thank you.